There are no shortcuts to getting highly coveted press coverage for your brand, only smart cuts like the DIY PR project. Learn how to grow your brand's credibility with PR on a budget with me by your side. This program is your all-in-one membership with expert training, customizable templates, and a supportive community to cheer you on every step of the way. Join us and start growing your business with free publicity today. Sign up now at diy-pr.com. What makes a brand truly unforgettable? According to designer and brand strategist Charity D'Amato Crawford, it's not just about what a brand looks like, it's about what it communicates. In this episode of Grow Your Wealth, I get to sit down with Charity, founder of Cleveland-based Studio Chartreuse, to explore the intersection of design, storytelling, and strategy, and how thoughtful branding can help you connect more deeply, show up more consistently, and work smarter, not harder, in your business. Charity shares her creative journey, the lessons she's learned from 2 decades of building brands with heart, and her take on how even small design tweaks can make a big impact in your business. We also talk about why your brand is so much more than just a logo, how to get clear on your visual direction, and what role AI can and can't play in the creative process. Whether you're an entrepreneur refining your identity or just starting out, this conversation will inspire you, like it inspired me, to think differently about design, not just as an aesthetic, but as a tool for clarity, connection, and growth. Here's Charity. Charity, it's amazing to have you here on the Grow Your Wealth podcast. Welcome. How's it going?
Hi, Rena. Great to see you. Great to talk to you. Thank you for having me as your guest today.
I am ecstatic. We are definitely in for some learnings today, some inspiration, but I want to start at the beginning with you, Charity, if you don't mind. You are one of the most fashionable, design savvy women that I've ever known. I want to get down to the nitty gritty. What really sparked your love for design, and how did that love of design really evolve into launching your own studio, Studio Chartreuse?
Well, I knew that I wanted to be a graphic designer from infancy. I swear. I kind of grew up in the middle of nowhere. We grew up in northern Maine, so on the Canadian border. And then my parents moved us to West Virginia when I was in high school. So very rural places. I got like inspiration from my Martha Stewart magazines and any publication for that matter. I used to love getting Vogue, the big thick ones, and travel. We did travel a lot as kids. So I always knew I was going to be a graphic designer. Actually, my aunt was a graphic designer, so my dad's sister, and she would do those back in the day. They did like weekly circular ads for grocery stores that were all hand illustrated. So there was no photography. It was just all beautiful illustrations. And she would bring home products and draw them. And I thought that was so cool because she had the cool markers, the really good smelling markers. They don't sell them very much anymore because I think they're illegal. But, they have like some bad smells to them. Anyhow, so I knew I was around creatives. I knew I loved the arts. I found inspiration in, like I said, magazines, a lot of magazines back in the day. It was my way of getting, insight to the outside world. I can't say that my mom or my sisters, any of us were super fashionable, but just studying those pages, I craved, originality, and became familiar with the different designers in the world that way. And as I went to college and kind of grew up, I fell in love with fashion. I love fashion, but my job is not fashion oriented, but maybe your readers, your listeners, your viewers, they will follow me and see that I do put out a daily picture, which is funny because I think a lot of people have come to know me for that. It has nothing really to do with my job, only that I love lots of color. I'm wearing black for you today. Did you notice?
I did notice. I thought, oh, you've got the bright background, but black against it. Very lovely.
Yeah. Thank you. So anyhow, I don't know. My love of creativity I feel like it was just born into me. And being a designer, I'm sorry, did I go off the rail?
No, you're great. Tell us about actually becoming a designer as well too. So you started with this incredible inspiration, which I can completely relate to. Honestly, it was like flipping through the pages of, for me, it was like Nylon and Vogue also too, right? Like really inspired me. But I was, I think, inspired by the words where it sounds like with you, you were really inspired by the visuals. It was totally like, growing up in not a big city
Yeah.
and eye out into what the rest of the world was doing. So, did that sort of lead you to studying design? I know that you've also worked for some pretty incredible places before starting your own studio too.
So I went to college at Syracuse University and I went there for design. So I knew that I wanted to be a graphic designer. And it was kind of an interesting, it was an interesting time. I went to college in the 90s. So I don't know that you could do this anymore, but I didn't really have a portfolio. I didn't come from my high school was a small high school. We had art, but no design specific. So I had to kind of make up my own design projects to bring for my portfolio review. And my mom took me up to Syracuse and I was there with many students from the New York City area. So it was high competition, but they gave me a shot, which was really great. And I think that was, I look back on that now thinking how nice that was. But I went for graphic design and I actually also thought, well, maybe if the design doesn't work out, I'll be a teacher. So I have a double major in art education as well. I really haven't ever used that, but I love being able to teach, and I think that's part of my role as a designer anyhow. So I think I get to use it in a weird way. But yes, it was actually called communication design, and we did everything from advertising to branding to product packaging and some space planning. So the whole thing in college. And while I was in school, I got to intern at Nickelodeon, which was really fun. I spent a summer in New York. Actually, I applied for 2 internships at Nickelodeon and at NBC. And I never heard from NBC, so I took the job at Nickelodeon. And there was a new brand at the time, which now is an old brand, but it's called Rugrats, the Rugrats. So, right, it was a show.
Yes.
They had like the brand standards were a thing. So they would give the interns the standards of, and these are the colors, these are the fonts. Take the logos and put it on a backpack. Take the logos and put it on pencils, and just making product for the brand. And so that's what I did all summer. But when I was there, I actually got a call from NBC saying, like, you were accepted to our internship program. And so I ended up working 3 days a week at Viacom, which was Nickelodeon, and 2 days a week at NBC. So I kind of split the internship. And at NBC, I did over the shoulder graphics, which I don't watch a lot of local news anymore. So I don't know if they do that or national news, but those graphics that came up, when they'd be talking about someone, I did those.
Yeah.
And I did them for, this is going to sound very morbid, but they had a list. If you weren't busy, you had to do over the shoulder graphics for people that might die. So they had them ready to go when they did die. And so I worked on a lot of those. That was my entree to television graphics.
I can completely relate. In journalism school, we greased the wheels with writing obituaries. So,
Oh,
yeah,
similar.
similar, yes, the grunt work.
Yeah. So I graduated college and I moved to Cleveland, Ohio. There was a guy in my program that his parents owned a small firm here in Cleveland, Ohio. And to me, Cleveland is a huge city at the time, right? Like now I look at it as kind of like a smaller city, but at the time it was metropolis.
Mm.
And I got a job there out of school. He recommended me for an internship and I got a job there. And I worked there for a few years. Then I moved to a company called Donor, which we were doing mostly business to business graphics. So a lot of, service-based design. And then from there, September 11th happens. And, a lot of my peers in New York City were getting let go. Marketing and advertising dollars were being cut. And so people were, just trying to come up with plan B. And then I looked at my screen one day and I thought, I was working on great national brands, and I will say this with all love, but Arby's, Ponderosa, and Bennigan's. I don't know if you remember Bennigan's, but it was like a fast casual restaurant for families. And I got great budgets. There were a lot of fun things I got to do, pop-up menus, scratch and sniff, all this cool stuff, which as a young designer, that was really fun.
Yeah.
But it really didn't, tug at my heartstrings. I wasn't dining at those restaurants a lot, so it just wasn't my place. So I quit my job and I thought, well, I'll just freelance and I'll work for, organizations. At the same time, I think that's where I met you. I had started a blog called I Heart Cleveland. I loved Cleveland. I still love Cleveland. I live here still.
Mm.
And people were really down on this community, this city. And I was like, as a newcomer, I thought it was great. Like I said, all my peers were still living in New York and they were having 3, 4 roommates and they had to work until 11 o'clock at night and they were just always burnt out. And I had this beautiful apartment in an old, what are they called? Like a wartime apartment building, like this gorgeous apartment building, huge ceilings, 2 sets of glass French doors from one room to the other. I mean, beautiful. And I think my rent was, under $500, but that's another story. But I got to go to work regular hours, 9 to 5. I mean, sometimes we worked late, but not very much. The quality of life was just different. I took yoga. I could go to at the time, a Cleveland Indians game, now Guardians, and go to theater, and I could travel. I had the extra money because the quality of life here was just a little simpler. So I started writing this blog, and I met a lot of people that way. And so my Studio Chartreuse business just started growing because of it. It was a nice way to meet people that wasn't such a hard sell, right? So I would meet people that work at the art museum. I would meet people that worked at United Way. I would meet people that worked at the Natural History Museum or just smaller nonprofits or people starting a business. And I wasn't there to sell design services necessarily. I was just there to kind of tell their story in a different manner. And anyhow, I think it was a great way to get the business up and running. So
I love that. Yeah, that's fantastic because I feel like that's such a great point of differentiation that you established for yourself. Also, decently early on is that you had kind of a personal brand, right? You built your own influence that was tied to your business, but not exclusively tied to your business, so that, it really revolves around, the different but related facets of Charity D'Amato Crawford. And I think that's such a valid point too, especially as business owners running agencies, right? Like yours, a Studio Chartreuse is of an agency type model. They're notorious for like cold calling, hard selling, right? Yeah. And you've taken a different approach and it's been successful so far, right?
And thinking back about it, the world of business and female business owners and just the world that we live in nowadays, when I started, they were 2 separate entities. And I never mentioned I did one or the other in each other's space. So I was a blogger when I was a blogger, and that's what I did. And I was a designer when I was a designer. And I went to a conference for business owners, for influencers. And someone just said, why not let people in on the whole you, not just parts of you? And I thought that was really nice. And so I said, well, I'm going to start signing my emails with, Studio Chartreuse, and then underneath content developer or influencer. And people started connecting the dots. Oh, I thought that was you. I didn't know that was you. Oh, you do design. Oh, that's really great. So it really connected the dots for my viewers and people that I ran into, people that I knew, but they didn't know maybe what I did for my job. So I think nowadays, of course, you would connect all the dots. Why wouldn't you tell everyone everything about it? I mean, you share so much nowadays anyways. But at the time I was very secretive because blogging was new and I didn't want I was in my young 20s and I didn't want my 50-year-old man client thinking that I was less than because I blog. So nowadays that's not the way at all. But back in the time, I feel like it was.
For sure. So let's talk about your day-to-day then. What do you do at Studio Chartreuse? Let's celebrate that.
Yeah, thanks. So we have been around now for 22 years. And I know, which is crazy. But so lucky. I feel like every day is a little bit different, as probably similar to you. But we are in the studio. We have a studio, a standalone building in a west suburb of Cleveland called Lakewood, Ohio. Those of you who don't know, we're about 15 minutes out of downtown. And our clients really love to come here. It's a bright space. It's full of color and reference, and we can just kind of pull samples and talk about formats and textures and all those kind of things. But we work with a variety of clients, everything from small business individuals starting something new to more of a established organization in the marketplace. A normal day is I'll come into the office, and right now there's just 2 of us. So my partner so Allie Forbes and I became partners recently, which I'm thrilled about.
Congrats.
I know. Thanks. That's a story for another podcast. I going through that whole thing, but it was a learning experience for the both of us, and I could talk about it for a while. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners are probably about my age, thinking about what's next. So
Yeah.
it's something you should maybe talk about. I'm not an expert, but since I just did it, I feel like I'm fresh out of dealing with attorneys. It's great.
Oh yeah. If you want to go there, we can go there.
Let's stick to creative stuff. Um, but so she and I will, kind of go over the day. What are our deadlines? What are we doing? Who's coming into the office? Prepping for that. We do a lot of events. So we're involved in a lot of different women's organizations. We'll host people at the studio for lunches, or we have a client that we were supposed to do, we do like art sales with. We just kind of we enjoy being in the creative community in Cleveland. And I think that's what we've become known for, is being connected to various creative outlets. But we'll work with clients to find out, to do like a brand discovery session, to find out what they're looking to accomplish. Someone comes to us and they say, we need a brand. Nowadays, it's really so easy to go get a brand online, right? So why did they come to us? It's more than just the logo. It's about the relationship of really developing strong creative collateral, or strong messaging and strong visuals that will sell your product or your service. And we just like to get to know our clients and really kind of put ourselves in their heads as to what the outcome is. So we want to make sure we start kind of with that outcome, what they'll be happy if they walk away from us and they're super happy because they had 500 people show up to their gala event and we made this beautiful invitation for them. Or if they sold 5,000 SKUs of their spice rubs in the first month, and we helped them develop the brand and the packaging and the voice and the copy and the creative for social, and all that kind of stuff. So we work, every day is a little bit different, which is funny because I don't know, my husband is a process engineer, and so he lives by this, like, every day is the exact same, and if it's not, it's weird. And I the total opposite. I'm like, process. We do have a process as far as the design work is concerned, but we're lucky enough that every day is a little bit different, and our clients are also different. That we might be at the art museum one day, and we might be, breaking ground for our new development with a hard hat on and boots somewhere else. So you never really know what you're getting yourself into.
That's so cool. I can definitely relate a little bit, and especially, working on the PR side of things for us, branding and imaging is so important, right? Like I've sent clients back to you, right? When they come to us, they say, we're ready for PR and marketing. And we're like, just pump on the brakes a little bit. Like, let's talk about your brand and your positioning, right? Is so important too. When you think about, I know you work with a lot of CPG brands, but you also work with a lot of establishments. And so when they're thinking about the ROI of good design, that might look like, shelf space or moving SKUs or getting people to your fundraising gala. And now we're talking, more than just a fancy logo or an expensive foil on an invite. We're really talking about creating an experience, are we not? I mean, people, they kind of make their first impression a lot of times based on a brand. I mean, do you have an example? Maybe it's with like the art museum, of like how good branding can really turn up the volume on a overall brand experience and the ROI on that experience for that brand.
Sure thing. So we, like you mentioned, we do a lot of work with the art museum here in Cleveland. They are a global institution, and their work, the shows that they bring in are just amazing. And it is a free museum, so they have a lot of foundation support and funding, but they also, they do a lot of work with various established individuals and donors. So we are brought in a lot of times to provide that experience, that branded experience of what the exhibit is going to look like and why they would want to come, and in turn, why they would want to donate their dollars to the museum itself. So, I mean, we've done some amazing invitations or marketing materials, collateral. A lot of the work that we do for them still is print, and I know that they have a strong web presence and a strong digital presence. But what happens is, know your audience. So their audience of donors are still in their 80s, 70s. They're not experiencing a digital landscape. Like, they're just not experiencing that world. So, when they get this big printed piece that's in vellum and they open it up and they have it sitting on their desk a lot of them still work, right? Because they're just workaholics or they love work. And they keep these things and they will come back to donating and giving to these different events at the art museum. And they'll say to us, like, it's because of that piece that we kept around on our desk. And we're so happy that you made that little beautiful box. And so they hear that all the time, which I think creates value for them in us. So, which is really nice. I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yeah, I like that a lot too. And especially you bring up a good point about the relationship between, print and digital. That makes me think a lot about AI, right? And how a lot of, especially small businesses are leaning on AI. But to me, as a marketer, what AI really can't replace is discernment. What it can't replace is knowing your audience. It can't replace taste as well too, right? Because there's a difference between I just need to get this done and focusing on the output. Like I need a logo. Okay, that's more of it's a vehicle for your brand. Whereas I need to build a brand that's going to have longevity and attract my type of clientele. I don't think AI is there yet, right? So it makes a lot of sense to work hand in hand with an expert like yourselves at Studio Chartreuse. Nevertheless, are you seeing AI influencing or impacting your own clientele in different ways? And if so, can you talk to us about what that is looking like right now? Hey there, I want to invite you to join our Grow Your Wealth community over on Slack. It's a safe space to network and connect with podcast guests, entrepreneurs, and wellness minded pros just like you. Head to growyourwealthpodcast.com/community to join us. That's growyourwealthpodcast.com/community. I look forward to seeing you over there.
I mean, I think we're still on the cusp of it here. With a lot of our clients, I mean, I'm seeing it more using copy as far as, although recently this is kind of funny. We had a meeting with a gentleman and he said, we put together a proposal of all the things that we thought he needed for his multiple restaurants. And he says, well, why would I hire you for apparel when I can take my logo and watch this? And we had our laptops and he's like, ChatGPT, put logo on sweatshirt. And I said, that is totally that you're right. Why would you hire for us to do that for you? But that's not how we would approach apparel. We would approach it in the thoughtful manner of no one wants to wear your logo on their sweatshirt. They want maybe a funny saying or a beautiful graphic or a series, a campaign that builds. So it's just more thoughtful. And whereas, like you said, AI is being used in more like tactics, like place logo on sweatshirt. Great. But developing an apparel campaign is different, or, a seasonal marketing strategy based around what we're going to sell in the retail shop to support the restaurant is totally different.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like I said, we do some space planning here at the studio as far as, if we're working with like a dental hygienist and they're going to open a space and they need a logo and they're not going to hire an interior designer, but they also want that front reception area to be beautiful. We can help them pick out paints, some basic stuff. So I recently heard this really great little commentary about AI is great and AI might be able to help you pick your paint color, but AI is not going to get that painter to show up on time to paint the wall. Whereas your local designer or your small business owner will be, they're your rep, they're your representation to call the painter, get the painter to show up. So I still think we have a lot of time to go till AI can do that for us. I mean, they can call, they can leave automated text messages a zillion times, but sometimes you're going to have to drive to the spot and make sure that it's going the way it should be. And that's the same with us with, so if I'm not talking about space planning, but if I'm talking about printing, so the design is only as beautiful as the finished piece. And we'll be working on something for months on our computer. And then the end result, we're like, they spent all this money, the client spent all this money on design and thinking and strategy. And then they take it to a cheap printer and it just doesn't have the beauty that you envision. So we can kind of step in there and say, hey, like, can we think about it a different way? I think you're really not using your investment in the right way.
I absolutely agree, right? I think that's the difference between AI is serving us more information than ever, but it can't implement, right? It can't, again, like choose the right paper finishes. Maybe it'll make recommendations, but you still need an expert, especially when you think about the investment on your brand. I mean, that's something that I even preach at Factor, where like there is nothing more valuable to your business than your brand, your perspective, your positioning, your reputation. And it's something that we've got to invest in appropriately. And that's not something that, AI can sort of remove barriers, but it can't really take it over the finish line, right? And take it over the finish line thoughtfully to ultimately drive an outcome. And I know that you've said before that design is communication too, which I think is so interesting, Charity. Could you explain, please, what does that mean in the context of brand building and why this is also such an important investment early on, especially for small businesses?
Thing. So I think a lot of times people think of graphic design as just making things pretty. So let's just make it pretty. Let's make it as a trifold and put it out there in the world, and we'll sell our tickets and we'll go to, but it's so much more. It's really about the words. What are people seeing? You have such little time for people to see the words and the images. Not to downplay photography. I think it's such an important element in our design process, but you only have a few seconds to grab someone nowadays on your brand, on something, even if it is that trifold that's going to sit at the Ritz-Carlton. Let's just say people are coming into town and you want to sell your tourism business or your tour business. You only have a second, maybe not even a second. Maybe you probably know that fact, but so how are we communicating to someone? What are we trying to put out there from a visual representation that says everything about you in 1 second? Is it clip art? I really hope not. Is it some photo that your kid took? I really hope not. But, I understand that everything comes with a dollar value, so we try and work with our clients to develop, what are they going to spend their money on? What is going to make their product communicate to their clients or their future clients or their customers in a thoughtful way? But yeah, it's so much more than just making pretty images, right? So we try and come up with a strategy through writing, through photography, through illustration, through just the contents of whatever they're trying to sell, and put it together so it's one cohesive message or one cohesive communication tool for the client and for their brand.
Absolutely. And it definitely lives beyond that initial launch period as well, too. I know that's something else that you've talked about. Like your brand is more than your logo. It's more than your website. It's really how people think and feel about who you are, what you sell, and your positioning in the marketplace. And so I'm just kind of curious about consistency. Have you seen in the past too, right? Like brands invest to have a great brand, great packaging out of the gate. How can they protect that going forward, right? Like obviously they can continue working with their branding agency for any and all assets. But that might not always be possible for some brands as well, too. Do you have any tips on that?
Yeah. So, when you are working with a branding agency, they should provide you with a brand standards document or a guidebook. People call it different things, but I always tell people, do you have a brand standards package? Oh yeah, we did that a long time ago, but we haven't looked at that again. So really use that as your toolbox, as your Bible. Go back and look at it. Try and grow from it. If they came up with 3 or 4 colors and you've used those 3 or 4 colors time and time again, maybe add 2 more colors, but always go back to that brand playbook, and really use that as your guide. I've had some clients recently that, we have Canva, great tool. And we know that that's it's not our tool, but a lot of clients it is. And so we'll set them up with good templates and good bones to use in Canva because they can't always be coming back to us, like you said. But what happens is Canva is coming up with all these bright and shiny things every week. And so then we're like, wait, they're not using the templates anymore. But this is new and shiny and fun. And so we try and bring them back to where the brand started. I'm that way with clothes, right? So I know I have a look. I dress in a very colorful way, but every now and then I want to wear, let's just say white, which is kind of weird for me. And I'll get a couple little messages like, what are you doing? What are you wearing today? So it confuses people like this, black. super crazy. And this is crazy. This is also, sometimes I've worn this to funerals because it's my black dress. But you know, I just think that you want to go back to the original brand standards. Think about that as your kind of your growing opportunity. Yes, you can grow from it. Yes, you can tweak it, but not be following these shiny opportunities that we're getting every day to change, to change, to change. You really want to allow your readers or your clients to get to know you for a long time. And you might think that you put something out new and it's boring to you, but it takes people a long time to remember your brand, to get to know your brand. It might be 2 years out until they finally figured it out and you're dying to change. But we have like a little offering that we sometimes do with the clients that we've worked with for a long time that will come to us and say, man, we've been using this logo for 10 years and we're bored. And they're great clients because they recognize like we've stayed on course, we've used our brand, we haven't, had AI jump in and help us fix something shiny and new. But we'll say it's a little Botox for your brand. So they come back to the office, they come back and after 10 years, we'll kind of just give them a little update. Sometimes people don't even, notice it. Their clients won't notice it, but to them, it's something new and fresh that they can play with. Maybe they have some new colors, some new patterns, new fonts that they can integrate into digital marketing strategies that are maybe more relevant. 10 years is a long time. So, there's so many different ways you can do it nowadays, but I do always say, try and come back to your roots, try and stick to your original brand that you fell in love with back then and grow it in small little instances.
I want to touch on that for here just for a second, because I think that this is a common symptom of a lot of founders and businesses is shiny object syndrome, right? Like, well, they're doing it that way, or did you see the latest launch from so and so? It's so good. We should try something like that. Or exactly like you said, Canva comes out with a new template and we're like, I love it. Let's hop on this bandwagon. And instead, we're chasing trends instead of building a brand, right? And that can be a scary place to be in, I feel like, for a lot of brands, because it can also alienate your audience. But there's this craving to also reach new audiences, greener pastures, expand, especially for a lot of entrepreneurs. I know I am very much guilty of this. Like, I wouldn't call it shiny object syndrome, Charity, but like, I'm ambitious. I'm paying attention to what others are doing, and always just trying to stretch my imagination a little bit. I love what you said about like just a little Botox, a little injection of something new, which is super cool. I think that that is just really smart to do as well. A smart investment. What about the brands like the 10-year-old brand? How did you decide to make tweaks instead of doing a rebrand? What are the indicators for a business like, you know what? It's probably time for a
A
rebrand.
rebrand. I mean, I think trends and in the world and in retail kind of direct some of that stuff for our clients. But this client that I was speaking to, her brand was great. It was clean. It was working. She wasn't seeing a downfall in business. She had a lot of vendor relationships that everyone knew who she was. So I think it was more that entrepreneurial, just need to do something else to change it up a little bit, just to want something new and fresh, because new and fresh is fun, right? When there's a new and fresh restaurant in town, don't you want to go there? Yes. So, yeah. So I think it's just, we take a look at what the client brings to us. So if they're a new client to us, we'll kind of take an audit of, why they did certain things, why they chose certain things, and also what they've invested in already. If they have taken their logo and sandblasted it into the side of a concrete building, we're probably not going to suggest that they change it, because that would be a huge undertaking to, we sandblast that building and do it again.
Right.
But can we take what they have and can we adjust it a little bit that people maybe not, they won't know, unless you're super savvy, that you would notice that we got rid of the dot on the top of the I, and now we're simplifying it and we're making a whole story around it. It's become a campaign that we've been in business 10 years and we're removing the dot because, I don't know, we're free. I'm just making all this up, but
Yeah.
I mean, like those simple little tweaks that you can make to change the narrative of your brand. Sometimes it's just that. It's what you're putting out on social media. It's not really changing the visuals. It's just changing the language, or tweaking the colors. Colors are really easy, are a nice way to refresh your brand. You don't have to change your logo. If you're a dark green and you want to turn up the volume to be a little bit more bright green, that's okay. Make those decisions at like a 10-year, a 5-year, celebrate it, make a story out of it. It's a great way to get PR,
Mhm.
but at, midnight when you're on your computer and you're searching Pinterest and you see another cereal brand that's doing their box in pink and you decide to change it to pink because you want to compete with them, that's just kind of that knee-jerk reaction of what's cool. And we would probably guide you away from that idea.
Thank goodness for that, right? Because one of the most important things, right, with brands is I think you bring up a great point about the storytelling component. And it is that story that is your secret sauce, essentially, right? That is what you have that nobody else has. And it's just such another beautiful example of like how your brand can really help steward that story and ultimately, drive new customer acquisition, things like that for your brand, but also just feels true and authentic, especially with like younger generations that when they're building brand loyalty, they do seem to want to align with brands that are very rooted in who they are. And so that brings up a good point. Instead of necessarily chasing trends, like be the trendsetter, right? There's an opportunity there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. People ask us why chartreuse, and there's so many different answers I've come up with over the years. But one of which is like people have strong opinions on the color. So
Mhm.
love it. You're like, oh, that was my grandmother's fridge in her kitchen. And we used to make sauce there on Sundays. It was lovely. I loved it. Or you hate it so much because, you bought a new house and you had to tear out that chartreuse kitchen and it was a pain in the behind. And like, you might have different opinions, but whatever we say, like, it ignited an opinion, right? It got you talking. So we think that a lot of our work, we try and say that it will do that for your clients through color. So
Ooh, I love that. I did not know that about the studio. That's fantastic.
we also, we're Francophiles, so we love France. I cannot say that any of us have ever lived there, but we're passionate about that. And there's a liqueur. I don't know if you're familiar with chartreuse or chartreuse, as my friend Anne says. She's French. And,
Yes.
uh, she so it's filling me. I don't know how to say the French words the right way, but anyhow, I digress. The liquor is made with 27 different herbs and spices, and it packs a big punch. It's a high proof alcohol, so we say we like that too. To cut it with tonic water because but tonic and chartreuse is a very refreshing summer drink. So
Ooh, good to know. Very good to know. I love that.
and with lots of information for you.
Oh my gosh, yes. We'll have to attach a recipe to this particular podcast episode.
I have
Uh, so Charity, I know we just have a few minutes left for listeners that are ready to take their brand to this next level, whether it be tiny tweaks or, kind of larger initiatives. What is something that they can do in the short term to start aligning their brand with a bigger vision? Because I know this is where a lot of brands kind of get tripped up, right? They can talk about their brand, but to really visualize it can be a challenge. And I know that that's where you can come in and help kind of illustrate that. But what are some exercises that they can do on their end to really start aligning their brand to their vision?
Sure thing. So a couple things. One is a really easy thing. Make yourself a secret Pinterest board, right? A secret Pinterest board goes a long way. And we say to our clients, just start putting things in there that inspire you, right? That make you feel excited, and write little notes as to why. And someday, if you ever work with a designer, you can share that secret board and it gives the designer an insight into your thinking, right? So it's, it might be an orange sneaker, let's say. Well, why did you like that orange sneaker? Oh, it reminded me of when I was a kid and we used to play basketball and my new brand is for kids. People think of the most interesting things when they're thinking of whatever they're trying to sell or promote. So secret Pinterest boards are great.
Mm.
It also helps designers understand a visual language of what you're thinking. So when you say modern and I say modern, totally different things. You say modern and I look at your secret Pinterest board and there is Chip and Joanna Gaines and all their shiplap and all of their what I would call country chic, but to someone who's living in a house from the 80s, that's modern. So, it makes me understand or makes designers understand what we're working with. So it gives them something to stand on. That's one thing, and that's super easy. You can do it when you're watching TV, really. You can also, I always think about myself included, organize your brand files. So put everything in one place, get everything in one drive so you're able to share it when it comes time to working with, a freelancer, a design firm, however you're going to go about doing it. When you step back and you look at all the marketing materials that you put together, you might be able to see that line of continuous, like continuity of what you're doing, what you're trying to say, and how you've tried all these different things, and maybe how it's worked, how it's not worked, but just really gathering your information in one place. Then I would think about, what does 5 years down the road look like for
Mm.
your success? Like when you say success in 5 years, what does that mean? When you say success in 10 years, what does that mean? What does it look like? How are you feeling? Have you sold the brand? Has it been super successful? Have you brought on partners? Are you, expanding into many grocery stores across the Northeast? All these things, that putting together that really thoughtful goal setting document. I think that would be really helpful if every client would show up in our office with that. It would make our job so much easier. But instead, we have to draw it out of them. Who is your audience? Try and think about those things. I think it's just a lot of internal work that you're going to do, that maybe you don't think about. You think of, just put a logo on it, put it on that sweatshirt, and we'll be all set for business. But and because it takes time, right? That kind of stuff. It's not all fun and beautiful. Figuring out what successful looks for you and your brand, I think, is really important.
Those are such great tips, Charity. And reminds me too how for a lot of businesses, right, their brand is kind of an extension of themselves, present company included in that. And so it makes a lot of sense just kind of peeling back the layers and going a step deeper, right? Because to your point, and I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that I'm taking from this episode is that, you know, a brand is just not like a shiny skin that you put on a package, right? It's really a lot deeper than that. And it's really about communicating a story to your audience that resonates and that feels authentic to yourself and to your brand too. So makes a lot of sense. Like nothing you want to rush into, nothing you want to like hop on the next Canva train and right? Like that's not strategic and it doesn't build longevity either, it sounds like.
Right. Because, next week there could be a new tool. My Canva's a tool. There'll
Right.
be a new tool. There'll be a new shiny object. And if you're
Hmm.
spending your time doing that, you're not actually working, on other things in your business that can actually be financially more exciting than changing out your logo every 5 weeks. So, you really, and I know those are fun things. I get it. I love to do that too. But yeah, I think that really being mindful about what you're changing or what you're developing or what you're creating with your designer alone is imperative to being a successful business person.
I love that. Yes. And if you're listening right now and you're thinking, oh, but I have an itch, I need to scratch it with my brand,
Yeah.
go buy a new pair of jeans. Go do something. Don't touch your business yet.
That's the truth. Buy a new pair of jeans or handbag. That's
Or a handbag. Ooh,
nice.
yes, even
Yeah.
better.
Although that can be just as expensive sometimes as getting a brand. But no, we sometimes advise people, and I didn't say this too, think about a small campaign. If you're really itching to try something new, what about just doing like a postcard that has your brand on it, but maybe has a different look? So just kind of think of it more as like an ad campaign, like something you see in a magazine. Like we all know that, let's say Coach, or yeah, let's say Coach, it's like a traditional dark brown, kind of moody, beautiful imagery. But every now and then they're going to do a campaign that's going to speak to a different audience. Maybe they want to reach college kids, and it's more like stickers and embroidery patches. And it's a different campaign, a different visual campaign, but they're still Coach. They still have that Coach logo on there. So
Yeah.
they're just looking at it a little bit differently, a little bit, they're tweaking it to the different audience. So you could try something like that if you're just getting an itch.
Ooh, that's a brilliant idea, actually. Um, Charity, it was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today. Where can people find you? Your work is absolutely gorgeous, and I know I'm biased, but trust me when I say if you have an itch, you have a campaign, a new brand, a rebrand, or just want an expert opinion to kind of reimagine what's possible for your business, Charity and her team, I highly recommend. Where can people find you?
Sure thing. Thanks, Rena. I feel the same about you.
Oh, thanks,
Um,
ma'am.
Our website is studio-chartreuse.com. And chartreuse, I'm going to give you a really easy way to spell it. Chart, reuse, ink like incorporated, not ink like in the drawing ink. So chart, reuse, ink. And then on social media, same thing. Instagram is Studio Chartreuse. And yeah, we're putting out a new website. I think by the time this airs, there'll be a new site with new work, new portfolio examples on there. So please, if your readers want to reach out and just honestly, I'm happy to get on a call with anybody and just have that conversation. It's fun. I'd love to hear what people are working on, and especially female business owners, which I know is probably a lot of your listeners. It's really fun. It's a privilege to be part of the process, or even to let someone bounce ideas off of us. It's really great. So, also, if you sign up for our newsletter, which we barely put one out, but what do they say? The kids don't wear shoes or something like that.
Yeah.
But we put one out like twice a year. But if you sign up for one, you get sort of like our brand sheet, the things to think about. So Rena, you were kind enough to say, like, what would you put, like, what would you think about? What could people have? The things to think about when starting a business and branding your business. So it's just a one-page worksheet, but it might be helpful to people as they kind of approach that idea.
Ooh, that is amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, we'll put the link in that to that in the show notes, as well as links to the website, Instagram, and so forth. Charity, it was such a pleasure. You're dynamite. Thank you so much for generously sharing your insights with us today.
I would do it again and again. I feel the same. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode deposited some useful advice and insights to help you grow your wealth. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future conversations. You can find more resources, episode details, and updates at growyourwealthpodcast.com. And let's keep the conversation going on Instagram. Follow me at Grow Your Wealth Podcast. I'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, or takeaway from today's show. Until next time, remember, burnout is optional. Take care, and I'll see you next week.